I just got back from a trip in the Pacific Northwest visiting my family, and I wanted to create a quick summary of the things I've learned from my Nana's life. We had the privilege and the joy of celebrating her life in Oregon. She lived a long life into her 80s, and there's just 5 big takeaways I had, not only from watching her as an example, but also reflecting through the funeral and just a lot of things that people had to say about her. So let's dive into 5 things I learned from my Nana. So quick story time, let me just give you a quick breakdown of who my Nana was. So Nana was born on Molokai in the pineapple fields in a plantation. So she was born in the 1930s, her parents immigrated from Japan, and they started a life here in Hawaii, working on the dole fields in Molokai. Then they moved to Wahiawa and worked in the cannery there for the rest of their life. But she actually started working in the cannery when she was 13. Fast forward, her family was not into religion at all, but Nana got into the Baptist sphere in her teenage years, met my papa. They ended up getting married, and this was in 55, I think they actually tied the knot. And my papa was a plumber, so he was here in Hawaii as well, born and raised in Honolulu. And then they ended up moving to Los Angeles, to LA, and had my mom there in 1956, and then ended up having 3 more girls, so a total of 4 little girls, all very close together in age, and then ended up moving up to Oregon and planting a few churches. So then living in Oregon, I didn't realize this, but they were totally little entrepreneurs. And I don't know why it took me so long to really have that realization. But biggest thing here is she always was so hardworking. So that's my number 1 takeaway from Nana's life, is a hard work ethic. And this is something that I've watched through real-time example and modeling, where she was actually my papa's assistant as a plumber's assistant. So papa would be on jobs, and herself as her little 4'11" Japanese woman would be his little assistant, running around, working with all the dudes, bringing the lunches, you name it. And that was her job. And she did that in addition to raising the 4 girls, also bustling them around to ballet and flute and piano and sports and you name it. And they were just so busy. And I just like to think and reflect back to what that must have been like in the 60s and 70s. Such different times, but very cool memories at the same time. So not only was it hard work ethic, number 1, but number 2, she made family a priority. In my tribute to her, the first thing I said was that she was the ultimate matriarch. And so when I think and I kind of reflect on what that means, she just was the ultimate mother figure and grandmother, and at the end of her life, great grandmother to another 5 great grandkids at the time she passed, which is a really cool legacy to think about. But she just was. It's just an instinct that she had, and she took over it and she owned the role, and everyone in our family totally respects and just knows her as that mother figure, which was really great. Then just going into her life a little bit more, as her kids went on their own, right? They had their own families. She really held down the fort. And so her house in Oregon was forever Nana's house, and it still will be, even though my aunt is taking over it fully now. It's Nana's house, right? So they had like a plot of land. They've always had farm animals. She has sheep now, but at one point they had ducks and they had geese and they had chickens. They've always kind of farmed and had that like gardener's green thumb for sure. So the red raspberries, the blackberries, the blueberries, the forever infamous walnut trees, and all the years of plucking walnuts and saving them from the squirrels is part of her legacy as well. And she was a busybody, but in a good way, in a productive way. And I think that's kind of where I get it from too. So the number 3 thing on my list is a productive hustler, in a sense of she was never really still and resting until her late days. But even then in her 80s, she was riding lawnmower around the yard, like she was a worker. Like she would wake up at 4:30 in the morning every morning, or 3:30, and start doing her art cards. She did dots by Gail, which is where her handmade written cards. And for every dot on the card, which was like her flower prints that she would do, it was supposed to be counting blessings in your life, which I really love that part, that she just made part of her hobby and part of her legacy. And so when we were doing the service, pastor asked everyone to raise hands. Raise your hand if you received 1 card from Gail, and everyone raised their hands. Raise your hand if you received multiple cards from Gail, and everyone raised their hands. And that's just a tribute to say how she was so well connected, and she kept busy, but with intention. It wasn't just busy for busy's sake or busy to make a lot of money. It was busy for relationships and busy for serving other people, which I really love. The last thing that I want to reflect on with Nana's life is really just being authentically you, and really just owning who you are, owning your beliefs, standing up for what you believe in. She was the ultimate diehard Jesus fan, and let everyone around them know that. She wasn't shy to talk about her beliefs, and if someone had an opposing belief, well, she'd just say, well, that's your opinion and this is mine. And another fun fact about Nana is when we were asking other people, well, how do you remember her? What was she like? feisty was the word that kept coming up over and over. And it's because she was opinionated in a good way. Like I said, she just knew her beliefs and was able to stand up for them. She had an overflowing self-confidence of who she was as a woman and as a grandmother and great-grandmother. And that, I think, demanded respect from people who interacted with her. So it was just a really cool, reflective trip to go on back home to Oregon and see everybody relive all these memories. All of these cool conversations came up and memories, stuff that I haven't even heard about my mom's childhood and my brother and his experience with Nana, because he's 10 years older. So he got Nana as the first grandchild for 10 years before I came along. And then a couple years later, the rest of my cousins came along. And so it's just so fun and so cool to think about. But in the big picture, realizing that life is so short, even though she had a long, full life of 80 years, there's so much going on at the speed of light. I feel like right now with content and business and just the phase of life of being in your 30s and the culture telling you that you have to do more and more and more. And at the end of the day, relationships matter more than anything. And so I just want to remind you guys, there is so much life to live, and it's so much more beyond our screens and everything that we do online. It's getting face to face with people, having authentic connections, and being authentically you at the end of the day. I hope that's a little perk in your day on your YouTube journey. It's been a great experience for me to go and reflect on my Nana's life, knowing that her legacy has not stopped now, but it will continue for the next lifespan of my children and their children, and we'll keep telling great stories about who she was. But that's it, yeah. So thanks for listening today. We'll see you next week with another video.